kind of worked our talks somewhat together because they complement each other so closely, and I can't emphasize the importance of what Lewis is doing. I look at what Andy and I are talking about and go to Lewis's talk and basically say, it's pretty much irrelevant what Andy and I are doing, but it is amazing that the digital transformation has, I'm going to say, driven and complicated what Lewis does in terms of disaster recovery. And I think it's a good way of segmenting, if you will, the challenge that corporations have. If you're not, what I'm going to say, a bleeding edge mode 2 company, and you're going through that transformation, it can be really daunting at times. And I think that's what we're prescriptively going to be trying to offer guidance towards. When Andy was talking in the beginning of his talk, he talked about the various transformations that we've been through. And I'd say most of the people that are speaking today have been through at least 6 genuine transformations. Maybe you don't go back as far as mainframe, maybe you do, but then the PCs came in, and then, well, the mini computers and the PCs, the LANs, the distributed network architecture, so the internet, the cloud, right? And I'm calling this digital transformation number 6 for me in my career. And if anybody remembers at the end, you can ask me what number 7 will be, and I can offer a guess at what number 7 will be. I have a pretty solid idea of what that's going to be, because people like Andy and Lewis and I and Wayne and Scott, we all live on the bleeding edge. That's our comfort zone. So in talking about our digital transformation, I am going to start from, I'm going to say, more of a reality, and that's a release reality, right? So when I've done releases in the past, you always kind of go into a release weekend. Notice I'm starting out. You're going into a release weekend. Why a weekend? Because maybe that's the least amount of impact it'll have on your customers should something go wrong, in every case in the over 30 years I've been doing this, something always has gone wrong. And sometimes it happens. I like this depiction from Dream Theater's Surrendered Reason album, is first of all, you're pulled away from your weekend, and it's not that you're being pulled away from your weekend, but you're just flooded with all kinds of problems on a release weekend. And the question then is, how do I get out of this conundrum of dedicating, if you will, entire war rooms for a release, where I take them all away for an entire weekend, and we barely get something released properly, and it takes them the following week to get the everything to stabilize. And I thought that's why we have test environments and things like that. And we're going to be talking about that and why digital transformation is just so important in this type of thing. And Andy alluded to the book that I'm based this on, and it's the book Switch by Chief and Dan Heath. And the book Switch is basically, it's how to change things when change is hard. And I actually say it's actually how to make change happen when it actually seems completely impossible. Maybe you've got the top-down approach of management backing your change, and you can use things like ADKAR and Cotter for formal change management. But most of the times we don't, because we really don't know at the executive level, because it's so new, what it is that we're transforming to. So the book Switch really, and the Kinevin framework that Andy talked about, are really going to help identify the things that we need to do. And what the book identifies is you can't change with just one facet of information. They've got 3 things. They use the rider, the elephant, and the path. The rider is the logical, rational side of a person. I know the right thing to do. I'm going to do it. I want to do it. And that's that. But then you've got the emotional side, the elephant. And, the rider's kind of the buzz side of you. The elephant's definitely the woody side of you, and Andy's talk on Toy Story. And the elephant is emotional and doesn't want to change. And the rider can fight the elephant and make it change only for so long, but then the rider gets tired. And the elephant's going to go where the elephant wants to go. The path is where you want to go. In our case, it's our digital transformation. And so if I were to take these 3 elements, I'm going to tie it then back to the Iasa model of the 5 pillars. The becoming digital, that's the path that we want to do. And basically, what is digital? We'll talk about that in the next few slides. But that's our Iasa Business Technology Strategy pillar. And what we want to do is we want to increase our agility and extend our customer reach. So that's the goal, if you will, the path that we want our elephant to go down. But the elephant's not wanting to go down that path necessarily. So our rider is going to have to govern the elephant. And the G word, right? Govern. Nobody wants to talk about governance and governing. We're going to find out what governance really means. And this is really around the Iasa IT environment pillar. And you want to foster a more effective and impacting business. Okay? And when I say foster a more effective and impacting business, that's taken out of the TOGAF model of what governance means. And then the elephant, how do we change the human factor, the culture factor? That's about going bimodal. And we'll talk about that when we get to that section, but basically that's the human dynamics pillar. It's understanding the cost and what you can do to accelerate adoption, and the costs are often not about the financial costs, it's the cost of your human capital talent investment, and we'll be getting into that in detail. So this is kind of a summary of what we're going to be covering. So let's talk about the path. What does it mean to be a digital business? And one of my colleagues here at T-Mobile really summed it up tremendously. He basically says, you're a taxi company, but you don't own any automobiles. You're a hotel chain, and you don't own property. Or you're a retail outlet, and you have no storefront. We can go on and on and on, right? You are a theater without a physical theater building, kind of a thing. So all of these things are what we think of when we talk about becoming a digital business. But what is a digital business? What makes these digital? And I think that one way to sum it down is, to make it just concise, is basically you've got information and stuff, and what you want to do is you want to sell that stuff and that information, basically things that you've got, you know. So what you can do is a person with an automobile that works for Lyft or Uber can, through an app, offer their services and get compensation for it. So I think becoming a digital business is two things. One is using the digital aspects of exposing APIs and things to your information, and the business side, getting money for it, monetization around that. And if I take a look at these are the ones that we think about, yeah, those are the low-hanging fruit. That's what we mean by digital business. But what about, like, Alaska Airlines? Are they digital? Absolutely. I like Alaska Airlines because they've got a developer portal, and you wouldn't think of Alaska Airlines as a digital company, right? You would think of them, well, they're an airline, and yeah, I can get information out of them, but they actually have information that others want. When we look at big data and we look at machine learning and things along those lines, these all need massive, massive, massive numbers of elements of information that you're not going to house just amongst your own systems. You might want to get external systems to help put that together. I have a colleague that did some machine learning work with only 2,000 records, so to speak, and it didn't work because you can't do machine learning with 2,000 records. He realized you've got to have 2 billion or more records of information and elements to do the machine learning that he was trying to do. And so he would need then to harvest other information and interpolate it into what he was trying to do, and that's what he's doing now. But you learn from your mistakes, as we heard from Andy. So one of the things about becoming a digital business, it's for anybody. Anybody has something that somebody wants to get at and understand. If it's not direct information, it might be information about the information that you've got. How many customers are in this demographic? How many customers are coming to you every day for this type of service, and so forth? And that's the kinds of things that you can start to monetize on. And the key here in becoming a digital business is don't wait. Start publishing APIs to information. It can be meaningless information. There's a roadmap at the very end of this talk that you can use to help guide how you might start doing that. But it's an API-first economy that we've created that allows us to say, okay, I don't need to know how the API is going to be built yet, but I know what it's going to be, and just define what those are and what information, if you will, that you have that others might be willing to pay for. So that's becoming a digital business. One way to map out what it is that you've got is to write customer journeys. I think customer journeys are one of the best ways to talk about, if you will, the emotional and physical reactions to the types of digital information and experiences that you can create. Now, this is completely fictional. I just made this up because I like all these things. I like Hulu, I like Amazon, and I like T-Mobile because it's the Un-carrier. How could you not like us? The digital platform journey that's depicted here is just an example of something where, Hulu has APIs. What if I put an ad out on Hulu, and this is, again, it's not real, it's not an announcement, it's just an illustrative example, where I wanted to basically upsell, if you will, a new phone that comes out. And I put an ad on Hulu. Well, if I click the ad on Hulu, Hulu knows who I am, and through some form of identity management shared between us, they can tell me in the ad, hey, this person is interested in upgrading their phone, and they're your customer. And then I can then give that customer experience, basically pause Hulu and basically say, hey, do you want to look at these new phones? And you go, yeah. Well, it can be an omni-channel experience, right? So this is digital platform. This is the microservices, the RESTful interfaces that allow us to take that user experience and share it amongst different avenues and channels. So one way of going would be, okay, at this point I'm going to continue watching my movie, but I'm going to go to the T-Mobile store when the movie's over and look and see what these new phones are like. Or I might just want to say, yeah, send me these phones, okay? Well, then I have a partnership, let's just say, with someone like Amazon, or it could be Uber, or it could be Lyft. And what they'll do is they'll have inventory, and then they'll send 2 phones over to me in a matter of 2 hours. I don't have to wait overnight. I don't have to wait for FedEx. It's just going to come on the Amazon truck when it brings my lettuce and my milk. Well, then it's going to have a little button in there that's a T-Mobile button, because if I decide I want to keep my existing phones or I want to switch to these new phones, whatever I decide, I'll put the other phone in the box and hit the T-Mobile button, and somebody like Amazon will come and pick it up. That's a digital experience. I can map that out so that I can see the different ways that I can handle that. So customer journeys are an art, if you will, of creating that experience that your customers want. And I look at the book as a good book as the Platinum Rule is do unto others as they want done unto them. And if you build a customer journey around that mantra that the Platinum Rule talks about, basically then you're going to create a tremendous user experience through the digital technologies that you've enabled. And this is all part of creating, if you will, that digital transformation. That's the path. The rider, now, we have to think about how do I get the people, if you will, on the rational side to do what's right. And I like this slide. I picked it off LinkedIn. Somebody modified it. Govern because nobody else will. Well, first of all, one of the things that's interesting about this comic, there's something wrong with this comic if you take a look at it. Who wants change? Well, everybody wants change. Who wants to change? Well, nobody wants to change. And then who's going to lead the change? And it's empty. One of the things that's missing in this comic would be the guidance. The guidance is how change will occur. A lot of times what we do is everybody in the first cell wants change, okay? But we don't give them any way of how they're going to change, the guidance part. And this gets into, later we'll talk about the elephant, what Andy's talk was about. But this is now the rational side of change. So if we take a look at governance, the governance is the way that we can actually create that change. But everybody's afraid of the word of governance. There are organizations that refuse to use that word in any form of documentation. They refuse to speak it. It is like it's a 4-letter word, I guess, even though it's not. But let's look at what governance really is. Simply stated, governance is essentially about ensuring that business is conducted properly. It's less about overt control and strict adherence to rules and more about guidance and effective and equitable usage of resources to ensure sustainability of an organization's strategic objectives. Now, if I took the word governance off that and put my company strategy is and left the rest of the words that way, people would embrace it. Because when you think about it, I like what I put on there, right? Mic drop, right? Do I really need to dwell on this? This is one of those things where we've taken governance and taken one small element about it, and we've just blown it completely out of proportion. We basically said, oh, it's about control. Oh, your ivory tower. Oh, you're going to tell me what I need to do. You're going to withhold my funds if I don't do it your way. I don't like governance. No, governance is about guidance. It's all about guidance. So when I look at this, another colleague and I put together something that tries to take this into the two sections. If it's more about guidance and less about control, it's still about both. Why do I need control? I mean, why would I even want to control my organization? So we created the Maslow's hierarchy of governance to digital actualization as opposed to self-actualization. Basically, you do have certain things like SOX and regulatory constraints that you've got to protect your organization from. So there is an element of control that's absolutely necessary, and I look at it in terms of it's to keep you and your company out of fines and jail, and that's the protect side. So if you look at policies, in any organization there are policies, right? If you break a policy, often it's subject to losing your employment with your employer when you break a policy. They're very strict. There's not a lot of them, but they are very strong in that they're there to protect the organization and the people in the organization. There are standards, which are boundaries, if you will, for safety, consistency, and reliability. And if you decide not to follow a standard, then you need to have very good justification for not doing so. But standards allow us to create that consistency that we need to be successful and effective. But that's as far as what I'm going to say the heavy hand of governance needs to go. And I think if you look at the TOGAF model, it really is about, you know, a small portion that's necessary to keep the business running. I do want to go back real quick. It's about ensuring the business is conducted properly, okay? That's really important that your business is conducted properly. And that's why you've got some protective aspects of governance. Now, what else is governance? Well, in our organization, we've got principles, reference architectures, axioms, patterns, various things that are out there that will guide and enable individuals, teams, and the entire organization to go the direction of that path. That digital transformation path is set out there. We have our goal set of what we want it to be, how we want to expose ourselves. Now I need guidance as to how I get there. And this is the guidance aspect of it. And one of the things that working with another Iasa organization, Gabriel Morgan at REI, he spent some time with us and he shared some really insightful information about that self-assessment, the top, if you will, the digital actualization of this hierarchy. Self-assessment is where you want to be, where basically your people are in DevOps teams and they're self-verifying. Yes, we can put scripts in place that allow us on code check-in to check out that our axioms and principles are being followed. We can put things in our operational aspect in terms of monitoring to make sure that our policies are being followed and correct them if they're wrong. And we are doing all of that. But the self-assessment aspect of it is a behavioral change, and that's something where basically governance in our organization is not about putting you under the microscope, basically. It's giving you the guidance to put yourself under the microscope because you want to do what's right. You want to do what is going to be very successful for whatever activities you're involved in, and that's really what we're getting down to on that self-assessment aspect of it, is we don't really have a formal review board. You don't bring your work to us and basically say, hey, can I go to the next step because you're a gate? What we do have is tremendous guidance. We will look at your high-level architectures. We'll look at your design. We've got self-assessment checklists and forms that you can go and do things with. But the idea then is if you've got areas where you're self-assessing that you're delinquent in because maybe you don't have the knowledge or access to the information you need, that's where we can come in as an organization and help you and get you that information that you need. And so, you know, we've really changed, if you will, the whole idea behind governance from what the perception of governance really is to what it actually is defined as, and I think that's kind of important. And so going under that thing, what is the kind of guidance that you put together? Andy talked about, and this is now not on the elephant side, this is still on the rider side. you've got to have all this information available. If you bring a horse to water, you can't make it drink, okay? On the next segment, we'll talk about making it drink. But in this segment, we're going to talk about if you bring a horse to water, there better be water there. And that's what this is about. If you want change to occur in the digital way, you better understand what digital is and really have good guidance as to how you get there and what's necessary. So this is a snapshot of a portal where you've got multiple types of information. First and foremost, I'm going to focus on the short videos. There's a lot of videos on YouTube where you can understand, you know, this might seem strange to some people, but not everybody knows what a RESTful API is. Not everybody understands how to write stateless systems, because state's necessary, right? How do I write a stateless system when state is necessary in the transactions I perform? Well, there's a video for that. It's 6 minutes long, it's 8 minutes long, and it actually lands the concept with examples of how to do it. But that's surface knowledge. That's not in-depth knowledge of how you do it. So on the far right side here, we've got the top industry articles. You know, a lot of what Martin Fowler writes about is so applicable, from microservices to CQRS patterns, APIs, and cloud. There are so many great articles and materials out there in great detail, even with source code, that you can go to. We've got some links to GitHub, for instance, in here. You've got a lot of industry information to get you there, and that's very applicable to that guidance, if you will, that the writer needs to do in moving the elephant down that path. In the middle section, we've got our own internal axioms, principles, reference architectures, checklists, 30-day challenges. What we've done is we found that people are technical, but they're not always wanting to learn in a technical way. So we've enlisted our communications group, and they are just completely fantastic. And they've created these 30-day challenges and videos and podcasts around the technical things that we're doing, but they do it in a way that anybody can listen to it or experience it and move forward with the concept. And I think that's something that you have to think about investing in. There's a cost to that, right? It takes time to do it. It takes money to do that. It's a well worth investment because the materials that they produce, the guidance they produce, it's professional and it covers a greater audience than any individual part of an organization can cover. Now, yeah, we've got our wikis and we've got our ways of communicating on Slack, and we do these things very effectively within our groups and peer-to-peer. But if you want something that's going to, think about the zeros here, right? You know, I'm going to look at Slack and wikis, and I'm going to say that's good for 3 zeros, for hundreds, actually 2 zeros for hundreds of people, right? If you need to get communication for something that's at 3 zeros to 4 zeros, thousands to tens of thousands, you're going to need to break out of, if you will, the traditional content management way of doing it and getting professional insights as to how you communicate to audiences that large. And we've done that, and we found the greatest success in doing that. So if you're only interested in 1 zero or 2 zeros, you can probably do it yourself. If you're in 3 zeros or 4 zeros, you're probably going to want to get some sort of professional assistance. And we've used some external professional assistance as well. A local speaker here, David Chappell, in the Seattle area, I can't think of anybody that can communicate as concisely and as effectively as he is. He's a professional communicator. I just love it when he talks about anything. Even if I'm not interested in the subject, I will listen to him talk about it because he's that effective. So I look at these things as a way of creating effective guidance. Now, I saved the best for last. What's the best? Lower right corner, we've got an innovation lab, an incubation lab, and hackathons. And in our incubation and innovation labs, what we've got are actual source code implementations around proofs of concepts around everything that we're promoting. So not only can you read about it from the industry, watch videos internal, watch videos external, and read our reference architectures and things, you can actually go to code and see how it's coded. And this is kind of one of those things. The water better be there, but there better be multiple types of water. Evidently, horses don't all drink the same type of water. So you need all the types of water to be there in your governance, in your guidance, if you will. You've got to cover every facet that you can imagine that's out there because everybody learns differently. One of the other things that we're going to talk about in the next thing is we are an Iasa corporate member, and that gets into the training aspect and how you get hands-on experience. But from this perspective, the hackathon is hands-on. It's really, really cool to see a bunch of people come in and start building solutions API first when they've never written an API before in their life. And it really makes it tangible. And I think it's one of the things that you want to do as part of your overall program of getting that transformation to occur. Is in the guidance, there's got to be a hands-on element where I can actually download the code and look at it myself and learn from it, but I can also participate by contributing to it. And I can't tell you enough, the architect that runs our hackathons and our innovation lab has done just a fantastic job of creating that. And the organization that is Uncarrier on the outside, it's very Uncarrier on the inside at this point, because it's exciting to see the teams that just get together and start putting stuff together. So going bimodal, this is the elephant. I've got the Gartner definition of what mode 1 and mode 2 is, and what I want to do is just emphasize within, I'm going to say, uncertain terms. You can disagree with this. I know Martin Fowler disagrees with this, or you can agree with it. I can tell you from experience, and this is iteration number 6. I'm not talking about experience from the last 2 years, 3 years. I'm talking about 30 years. At some point, you're going to get to this, no matter what. You're either going to do it reactively, because you're going to try every way to do mode 1 into mode 2, but you're going to have to realize at some point, with every transformation, there are people in the mode 2 side, the Buzz Lightyears and Andy's talk from Toy Story, that are just going to be more prone. It's a personality type. It doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's just their personality is, I want to be on the next cool, fast-moving, bleeding-edge type of thing. And I look at it, and there's one of these things where the mode 2 is going to drive the transformation without question. We've got pockets of mode 2 teams that just drive transformation tremendously, and they're very effective. One thing that you can do in your digital transformation strategy that hurts them is you can pull them back. So when you've got mode 2 entities that are out there, you got to let them run, man. You can't pull them back. You can't hold them back to your way you're trying to move the other 93% of the organization. These 7% just need to go and just trailblaze, and you got to get out of their way. On the mode 1 side, they're predictable. They're going to run your legacy systems, and your legacy systems are not going away. Even if you lift and shift everything into the cloud, if you think you can do that, the legacy systems are still there. They're legacy systems. You're going to need mode 1 people that want to not change, to be able to feel like they are still part of the big organization's strategy, because they are. They really, really are. I think Andy said it best in his talk. It's not that one is better than the other. There is no better. They're both necessary. The keys in his slide deck, right, at the keyboard, the white keys and the black keys. If you take the black keys away, the white keys, you can't play as many songs. So you need both of them. So deliver your digital platform bimodally. And again, this is an illustration. This is just a way of depicting. Your monolithic systems on the left, basically you went top to bottom. Everything was state managed in the ecosystem of everything that was there. And you basically have these systems, and they're going to persist. They're not going to go away. But if you create these systems as on the left as becoming the bottom row, on the right side, your systems of record, your mode 1 teams are going to be able to maybe expose a lot of what the information is in those systems of record, so that your mode 2 can be consumers of it. The mode 2 people aren't going to be interested in rewriting, if you will, all of your legacy systems from ERP to CRM and so forth. They're going to be wanting to expose them to these customer journeys they created to create these great user experiences. And one way to do that is you create your aggregated APIs that you share with others external to your organization. You're going to be publishing your APIs for others to consume for money, by the way. You don't do it for free. You might have leaders out there that are for free, but you need to think of a monetization model. Now, what did I just say? If we change ourselves from a cost center on the left and create a profit center by doing it on the right, we've just created a different way that IT interacts with the business. We've gone from, oh, I got to work with these guys and they cost too much, to, oh, I got to work with these guys because we're going to make money with them. That's where you want to be. But you're not going to do it alone, and certainly maybe cloud operations, cloud configurations and things like that, you're going to have mode 1 and you're going to have mode 2 people, but generally your mode 2 people are going to be on the loosely coupled, JSON type interface systems where you're creating a lot of your user experiences on multiple devices. This is kinds of things. I threw Hulu in here as another example because you've got third parties in there. And I think that's really one of the keys, right, is what great things can you do when other organizations are coming into you for information that they can then share with their customers and expose you to them. So there's a real great profitability model. Everybody talks about the systems of engagement, these systems of record. We sometimes throw systems of aggregation or systems of interface or whatever in the middle there somewhere. Jeffrey Moore is actually the person that came up with this in his paper, The Sea of Change, and I've got that referenced here. So I think it's worth a read, if you will. It is in our reading list. Bimodal human capital talent investment. Wow, that's a mouthful, right? This is really, really hard. Let me say that one more time. It's really, really hard, okay? Human change and culture change is almost impossible, if not impossible. So what are some guidance that you can do around dealing with that? Because digital allows us to move fast, really, really fast, and allows us to be very agile in the way that we can spin things up, right? I've got a T-Mobile Tuesday idea. I might have days to get it out there. I might have hours to get it out there. How do I create an environment that's as fast changing as that when they don't maybe want to change? Well, the first thing I'm going to say, and this is coming from experience, like everything Andy and I have talked about, and Louis so far, and I know Scott will, and Wayne and the others, it's experience. We're not talking to you through academic goggles. This is lots of bruises in this. Embrace failure. You've heard Andy say it, you're going to hear me say it, you'll hear others say it. You know, if I fail 5 times to 1 success in a digital way, I'm still going to be faster than the old way of doing it. Because the way that the tools, and Andy talked about this, are such that I can spin things up so fast. I can spin something up, fail with it, get rid of it, spin something new up, fail with it, get rid of it, spin something new up, fail with it, get rid of it. Iteratively, finally, I get a success. And I might be spinning 5 things up at a time, only to find that one of them works the right way. You're always going to be faster if you embrace failure, because failure is how you educate yourself. Failure allows you to move forward. Doing it right, you've taken these classes, right? You've taken programming classes, you've taken middleware classes, you've taken package classes like for content management and so forth like that, where everything works perfect. You go back home into your own little world, and you start doing it and nothing works. And you're like, well, why doesn't it work? It worked perfect in the class. Learning from everything working is like soccer games where everybody gets a trophy. I'm sorry if I offend anyone. I was part of that generation. My kids are damaged because of it. Everybody in my kids' generation got trophies, and I was part of that problem. The reality is failure occurs. Embrace it. Learn from it. I would love to see on my review, how many times did you fail this year, and what did you learn from it? We don't ask those questions. We should ask those questions, because if you don't take forward what you learned from your failures, you're not moving forward, and that's exactly what you want to do. Interesting thing on the next bullet, reward mode 2, and promote, the self-selecting people that go from mode 1 to mode 2. A lot of organizations reward those that are working on those weekends and those that are in the war rooms with incentives and thank yous because of the dedication they've done to make that situation work for the organization. And as we move to digital, I'm going to be releasing every day, every week, every hour. And it's it's going to be uneventful, and nobody will know that it happened, okay? So if nobody knows that it happened, how do I ever reward these people? It's kind of funny. When things go right, you don't care. Everything's great. You don't look at the people that made it go right. But when things go wrong, you notice it. And then you look at the people that get that wrong made right. Well, I look at organizations to come up with an automated monitoring system, if you will, for those working in the Mode 2 way, the Buzz Lightyears from Andy's talk, so that they are actually rewarded for things working the way they're supposed to work, because that's essentially what you want it to be. It's kind of like an airline pilot, right? When they're flying an airplane, it's pretty much boring. But when something goes wrong, they take it with a cool attitude, get it up and running through redundant systems, and then move forward. And I think that we don't often reward our Mode 2 people significantly enough because they're pretty much invisible because what they're doing is working. That's kind of a weird situation that we need to remedy. Time and budget. Boy, I don't even know how to put this. Mode 1 is going to need a lot of support. The people that are being asked to change, because a lot of organizations want everybody to change to be Mode 2, and they haven't gotten to the bimodal way of thinking yet. So they're not going to allow Mode 1 and Mode 2 to work together. They're basically going to say, hey, let's just move everybody to Mode 2. That doesn't work. And what's going to take time is that these people, they're elephants, if you will, their emotional side, they don't know why they're changing. They don't see the benefit in it, but some of them will. And when they do, it's kind of like the worst non-smoker is a previous smoker, a reformed smoker. Someone once told me that, right? It's kind of one of those things where when the few Mode 1 people that will shift to Mode 2, they will become the biggest proponents of Mode 2. But not everybody's going to do that, and they're going to need time to do that. Why? Because they've got it ingrained in them how they've always done it before. And the way that we learn, humans, when we're adults, is we don't learn directly, you know, here's the new way of doing it, flip a switch, I'm doing it the new way. We equate how we used to do it to how we're doing it new, and we try to make the new way look like the old way. That's our first mistake, but we have to fail at that before we start doing it the right way. And so you need to have a roadmap that we'll go through in a minute as to how you get there around these things. But your Mode 1 people, they need time, they need space, they need budget, they need to vent, and you need to let them vent. You know, you have a training plan. So one of the things that we do in T-Mobile, because we're a corporate member, we try to teach the Iasa Foundation course quarterly. Well, we've rolled a lot of our digital transformation information into that course, because what we want to do, and it's interesting because the course really allows us to teach digital transformation with the 5 pillars, because this digital transformation is based on elements of the 5 pillars. And so we can actually work that together, and that's a training plan that really works. And the other thing is patience. And I know Andy talked about this in his talk, and I reference his talk is in the lower right-hand corner. You really want to get his slides. It doesn't happen overnight. It could take years. Generally, transformation can take 2 to 10 years. I remember when the LAN was transformational, the local area network, that thing that we just take for granted that's wireless now, right? I remember when it was brand new. It took 10 years for the LAN to land in enterprises. And that was a painful transformation. But it took off, and you can see what's happened ever since. Now, if you take a look at your current transformation goals and aspirations around digital, what you'll find is, guess what? It's going to take longer than you think. And there's going to be a lot more disappointments along the way than you realize. And it's going to cost a lot more than you realize. And there's just going to be a lot more pain than you can ever anticipate. And so several colleagues and I, we run marathons. And I like to say it's like mile 20 in a marathon. Mile 20 is essentially the wall. Sometimes it's mile 18 for me, sometimes it's mile 22. But in that range, it's around mile 20. Guess what? Your body just quits. It doesn't want to run anymore. And everything in your being to move that leg forward takes every positive thought that you can put together to make that happen, because you just want to stop. You're spent, you're burnt out, and that's what's going to happen in your digital transformation. You're going to hit that wall, and you're basically going to say, I'm done. We're not going to transform. It's not going to happen. But if you continue to persist, you will finish that race. And that is the key, is you need patience. So this is the roadmap. And I take the rider, the elephant, and the path. You need all three. Now, this is an illustrative roadmap. It's not necessarily our roadmap that we're using. It's close, but not exactly. I tried to genericize it so that you can make your own. The roadmap you use, you have to build. You have to build your path, your roadmaps for your transformation, because you know your organization. But ideas here are, you need to have an ideal state. You've got to know what that true north is. You've got to have an ideal state that basically says, this is where we're going. This is what it looks like. If you remember the first slide, I was at a drive-in theater during the day, and it was being flooded, right? Well, the ideal state is, I'm in a drive-in theater in the evening, and it's beautiful, and it's dry, and it's going to be cool. That's my ideal state. But you cannot get there unless you have patience. It takes time. So what I tried to do is to depict, if you will, what's all affecting that transformation to occur. You've got the elements of the book switch, but then you've got your maturity, and you've got to target your outcomes. Your digital maturity. You're probably thinking, well, yeah, we're probably standardized or rationalized right now, and I bet that's where we would start. Think again. You will be amazed at how basic you are, maybe, in your organization based on the packages that your systems of record are coming from. Most of the packages that companies use are really at the basic level from a digital transformation perspective. They're advanced for what they do, the CRM, the EDP, ERM, all these things, but you do have to realize from a digital perspective, they're not necessarily API enabled. They're not exposable. You don't have control over what information you can expose. So you've got to realize you're going to start at the basics here. And from a rider perspective, you want to have reference architectures and implementations and code and things like that for them at the basic level to start from. To motivate the elephant, it's all about training. You can have the water, but you're not going to get them to drink. The training will get them to drink. You need to invest in your people, especially the ones that want to transform, so that you've got a way of allowing them to do that. We've got Cloud Foundry classes, API classes. We've got Iasa Foundation class. We've got our hackathons. It's all hands-on and things like that. Well, hackathons gets standardized, but our standards from the path, some simple standards. You don't need to go crazy, but standards are going to be the guidance, and that's the only part of governance that's on the protect the company side. You might have some standards around basically what you allow to be exposed outside the company and how you expose stuff internally into the company and so forth. This is the basic. The targets that you want to focus on at this point are non-mission critical, low impact. I was just having a conversation with one of our teams last week. They chose mission critical, high impact as their first project for digital transformation. And I just started pulling what little hair I have left out and saying, no, you can't do that. They go, why? We've got to show the business that we're serious about this. And I said, yes, you do. But you've got to do it in time. I said, you hide behind 2 iterations. Do non-mission critical stuff first, because you're going to learn. You're going to realize that what you think you know, you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know, but you will learn it at this basic level. So that digital maturity of basic, you've got to really go with low impact, non-mission critical, so you can have throwaway code. You build it, you build an API, you build a solution, it works, it's not what you want, but now you've done that, you know how to go to where you want. So you get into the standardized maturity. This is where your writer's got to provide checklists for you. Did you do these things? Did you remember to do these other things? Is it configured this way? Simple checklists. I'm not a fan of checklists until we built them for digital transformation, and I realized, wow, these are really helpful. Actually, they're not bad at all. Other things that you do at the standardized level are your boot camps and your hackathons. You get hands-on experience, and you have teams where you're encouraging others to do the hackathons together so they're learning from each other. You really want to be the man behind the curtain. You want to be as invisible as possible so that your teams are working with each other peer-to-peer to build each other up. to advance themselves. And the next thing then are your tools and repositories. Where is your source code being stored? What are the tools you're using to build? Are you using, Ansible? Are you using Jenkins? Are you using Chef? Are you using Puppet? What are the tools that are out there? Different teams are going to use different tools. That's okay. You don't need to standardize on everything, just a few things. But the tools are pretty much going to be team by team, and there's no way to get around it. It's going to happen where teams are going to use different tools, and that's okay. You don't need to dwell on that. But actually, at this point, you've got enough experience now where you can do non-mission critical, but you want high visibility. These are things that aren't going to change a company, but they're highly visible so that you can show, if you will, executive management that you're moving forward, and you're moving forward in a good way. And it gets the juices thinking, the creative juices thinking. Next part is rationalized. This is where you're actually operating digitally now. You've got continuous development, continuous integration. You're deploying green, blue. Your DevOps teams are actually humming at this point. And this is where the self-assessments come in. Notice in the first two stages, governance, the hard hand of governance, it doesn't exist. At this point, you've got self-assessments. You're going to do it because you want to make sure you're doing it right. You're going to use the checklist, the self-assessments to make sure I'm doing it right, and I'll pull in peers in my organization, other parts of the organization, to help me learn the things, because you can't learn every aspect of digital all at once. You're going to excel on some things. You might excel on building the loosely coupled services and microservices, but you might be weak on the automated build. So get another part of the organization to help you with the automated build. Bimodal is really going to be pretty paramount at this point. You want bimodal teams, the Mode 2 teams, building your digital applications and solutions, because it's now becoming mission critical. And that gets down to the point it's low impact but mission critical. And this is where your gateways and your platforms, it could be your AWS platform, Azure, Google, Cloud Foundry, OpenStack, CloudStack, Eucalyptus, whatever it is that you're building on is in place, and you have everything to where it's actually self-supporting, onboarding, and so forth. The worst thing you can do to a developer is say, hey, use this gateway, and they have no way of getting the API defined in the gateway. You've got to have clear automation in terms of onboarding. And then you get into dynamic, which is a utopia. But once you get to rationalize, you've met critical mass. When you meet critical mass, you are now digital, and you're now executing, if you will, on most all cylinders, the cylinders that matter. But as you move forward, the dynamic side, you're going to create a digital pipeline for your organization. You're going to be really honed in on the 2 pizza teams that Amazon uses, right? These are the 6-person teams that are very productive in building out solutions, and they do it in the record time. And then you've got automated governance. This is basically, as I check source code in, it's being self-assessed through automation. As I deploy systems, it's being self-assessed through policy checks so that the right ports and things like that are there, and it'll be self-correcting. And actually, we have elements of this in our business already today that are working, and it's really cool when you see it happen. So at that point, you've got a roadmap. You've got a way of going from non-digital to digital. You're addressing it on every facet that you must address it on. You can't pick the rider, you can't pick the elephant alone, you can't pick the path alone. And a lot of companies will pick 1 or 2, but they'll leave out the 3rd. You got to have all 3. If you don't have all 3, it's really going to be a struggle. And it's going to fail. It's going to take a year just to get things spun up and going. If you're not doing it yet, you better start soon, because the rest of the world is moving that way. And if you are doing it, you might be missing one of these elements. Start implementing the element. Get it to a point where you're actually executing on it, because you've got to get to that critical mass as fast as possible. So what happens when you do transform, when you get to that critical mass? Well, you kind of get your weekend back. You kind of get to use it for yourself, because you're releasing on a regular basis, and you don't need to do it on weekends or at night or weird hours, because you're doing continuous deployments. And you probably have reduced your costs. You've created a greater footprint for IT, because you're now a profit center. You've increased agility. You have access to more customers, and more customers have access to you, and other businesses now might have access to you. And you're more effective then in the profitability of your business, because you're doing things for profit for the business as opposed to being a cost center. So I say you should just be playing on the weekend. You shouldn't be working on the weekend. And that kind of gets to the point, and I apologize for being 5 minutes over, but I get passionate about this, and you can see that.